In the middle of the 19th century, going under the knife was a terrifying gamble. Patients remained entirely conscious, and the unsanitary conditions of the operating theater meant that even a flawless procedure frequently ended in a fatal infection. A major part of the danger came from how medicine was actually organized. Doctors largely worked in isolation. Without a centralized system to compare clinical outcomes or share successful techniques, a surgeon in one town might rely on a method that a doctor 10 miles away had already proven deadly. You can see the consequences of this isolation in the widespread use of braided silk thread to tie off bleeding arteries. Surgeons routinely used these unsterilized silk ligatures, unknowingly introducing bacteria deep into the patient's body, which routinely triggered a lethal blood poisoning they called pyemia. To stop this cycle of isolated trial and error, a new professional structure emerged in the 1860s. Groups like the Harveian Society, the Royal Medical and Chirurgical Society, and the Obstetrical Society of London began to organize the field. These organizations functioned as rigorous intellectual testing grounds. They required doctors to stand in front of their peers, present their clinical data, and defend their surgical methods against public scrutiny. By forcing practitioners out of their private silos and into these debating halls, the medical societies initiated the transition from a solitary trade into a collaborative, evidence-based science. The immediate result of this collaboration was a rapid vetting of new, life-saving tools. In April 1866, members of the Harveian Society gathered to review a promising new anesthetic device invented by a Dr. Richardson, the ether spray. We can read the minutes from that meeting printed in the journals, recording local anesthesia achieved through targeted freezing. The report lists common procedures, like opening abscesses, noting carefully that across these cases, absolutely no pain was felt by the patients. Once the agony of the initial incision was managed, surgeons still had to address the massive postoperative infection rates caused by tying off veins. In a January 1863 report to the Royal Medical and Chirurgical Society, a surgeon named Dr. John Dix submitted clinical results for a new technique designed to replace the lethal silk thread, the wire compress. Because braided silk is porous, it acts like a sponge, absorbing fluids and encouraging rot right at the surgical site. A smooth metallic wire, on the other hand, cleanly pinches the blood vessel shut without trapping any foreign bacteria. After reviewing the data, the society recorded their consensus. They documented that bleeding could be arrested with metal wires that were almost or altogether free from the severe irritation caused by the old ligatures. By testing and universally adopting targeted anesthetics to stop the pain and sterile metal wires to stop the bleeding, the profession aggressively shifted a patient's odds of surviving the operating table. The societies didn't restrict their investigations to external surgical tools. They also began to map the invisible, internal mechanisms that were quietly killing their patients. For decades, doctors struggled to explain why seemingly healthy women would suddenly collapse and die shortly after a successful delivery or surgery. In 1866, Dr. Henry C. Stewart presented a report on a condition called embolia that offered a concrete answer. Instead of blaming an imbalance of the humors, Stewart detailed the exact mechanical process. A solid, fibrinous blood clot breaks loose, travels through the branching arteries, and physically blocks the flow of blood to the heart or lungs. This drive to replace guesswork with anatomical certainty was urgent for the Obstetrical Society of London, which aimed to replace regional folk remedies with a single, uniform clinical standard for childbirth. Practitioners like Dr. W. Tyler Smith introduced precision instruments like the periodoscope, a specialized calculating dial that allowed doctors to track gestation timelines using standardized mathematics rather than anecdotal estimations. The society also actively debunked the well-intentioned but dangerous home remedies that dominated postpartum care, particularly the archaic methods used to treat inflamed breast tissue. We can see them officially striking down these practices in print. They explicitly warned the medical community that the popular habit of continuous poulticing was decidedly mischievous and severely hindered a mother's recovery. By isolating the mechanics of internal clots and engineering tools like the periodoscope, these doctors treated the human body as a system of predictable, manageable laws. This era of rapid standardization culminated in 1866, when the medical societies hosted a grand conversatio at the Royal College of Physicians. It was a physical manifestation of a unified, highly formal medical profession. The core attraction of the event was a massive exhibition. The societies gathered a comprehensive collection of obstetric and surgical instruments, spanning centuries of history and sourced from various countries all over the world, placing them side by side for review. The exhibition created a stark visual timeline. Attendees could compare the terrifying rusted iron implements of their predecessors directly against the polished steel forceps of their own era, safely stored in velvet-lined cases. This exhibition served a highly strategic public relations purpose. By showcasing their refined, sterile technology in such a prestigious setting, these practitioners actively shed the old stereotype of the butcher and visually cemented their identity as modern men of science. By institutionalizing peer review and standardizing surgical technology, the medical societies of the 1860s replaced isolated trades with the systems of data sharing and rigor found in modern healthcare.